Why we know that feminists know feminism is wrong. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and before I get to this scripted video, I want to make sure you know to spread this video around on social media if you like it, and make sure to follow me on BitChute and enable notifications there because I don't know how long the authoritarians will allow me to be here. Anyhow, I finally had the realization that it's actually clear as day at this point that the dramatic majority of even famous feminists don't even believe in feminism entirely, which is probably why the heyday of fourth wave feminism has long since passed, and the biggest feminist bullies around, like Lindy West once was, who once proudly bragged about being a mighty Twitter troll slayer, ended up leaving the platform right after she tried to revise history to pretend she was always just a nice feminist there in good faith.
And the reaction to it was that I won, because you can't... It just, it was kind okay. It was like really smart of me. Because it set up this dichotomy where you had to pick, like, which team do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the nice lady team, or the rape team, the pro-rape comedy baby team? And so it really turned the tide pretty much instantly.
Lindy West, of course, also wrote numerous examples of some of the most heinously sexist articles during the peak of fourth wave feminism, such as this classic about how misandry isn't a thing because men have never experienced workplace discrimination or anything. Which, of course, I imagine James Damore, who was fired from Google for writing a pro-diversity memo, might have something to say about.
There was that part of the document, and then the actual, policy suggestions, where I suggested that, a lot of these programs aren't doing what they are intended to do. They are actually increasing tensions within the company. They are enforcing some moral standard that is inherently asymmetric, and there are certain things that men aren't even allowed to talk about. And, my firing was a perfect example of that, where, I don't think that a woman would have been fired for what I did. And, I've talked to several people and they were like, yes, men can't talk about certain things. And then I asked them, are there any things that women can't talk about? And they're like, no, of course not.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's clear that Lindy West was either flat out wrong about the workplace discrimination that men face and didn't know what she was talking about, or she might have even known what she was saying was BS but didn't care a great deal at the time. Maybe because Jezebel hired her to gleefully flaunt her hatred of men, and since she was going through a man-hating phase in her life anyway, she never thought twice. Ultimately, the jury is still out on Lindy West, and there's a very simple reason for that. As I already stated, she's not on Twitter anymore, so it's hard to observe her in action. And judging by what happens when you Google search her name, she's not even actively writing a great deal that's being published, aside from her 2 actual books. It's as if she no longer likes receiving attention, aside from book tour dates. Perhaps, just perhaps, Lindy grew exhausted after years of having to defend indefensible positions, clear and obvious examples of hypocrisy, like the absurd idea that Twitter's mighty troll slayer was actually just a nice feminist the entire time, while she had to silently observe more and more frequent examples of just how wrong she was about basically every claim she ever made about female discrimination. Judging by the fact that she got 2 book deals and a job writing at the New York Times, it's clear that she's only ever dealt with positive discrimination. But of course, she wouldn't dare ever say so, even though she's undoubtedly probably realized that by now. I'm guessing undoubtedly probably that's kind of a redundant statement. But regardless, if she were to admit to that reality, it would be the quickest way to end her privileged career of male exploitation, as she steps on every male head for personal gains, all the while complaining about how difficult it supposedly is to do so. Regardless, it's been a while since I've brought up Lindy West, and while it's mainly because of the fact that she's all but vanished from the public spotlight, and instead probably makes a living off of book sales from white, overweight, soccer mom America, I do also have to admit that I haven't written about her because of a charitable feeling. I have a very strong suspicion that Lindy West truly has caught on to just how dishonest the feminist ideology is. I mean, remember, she must have if she started lying like this.
Because it set up this dichotomy where you had to pick, like, which team do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the nice lady team, or the rape team, the pro-rape comedy baby team?
You see, here's the thing, and this is how we know feminists mostly don't believe the crap that they say. I challenge you to find any feminist you know and have a conversation with her or him about their views on some of the crazier sides of feminism. You know, the types of things that the family court laws are actually built upon and other things like that. If you try this, I assure you that 99% of all feminists will say something to the effect of, well, those are the radicals, and I don't agree with them. Of course, you know that. They will admit that the radicals are bad, but then, of course, they'll also claim that they aren't radicals, so it's okay. Presumably because they know what feminism really is, and so whatever they tell you feminism really is must be acceptable. And then, of course, they'll try their damnedest to make it palatable as long as you seem like you're buying it. Here's what happens. After denouncing the so-called radical feminism that you noted as an example, they'll tell you all sorts of different things about what feminism really is, expecting you to swallow it, but those things will depend upon who you are and how you approach the conversation. For example, if they think you're completely clueless, they'll just recite the dictionary definition. If they notice that you're not a traditional man or woman, they'll make claims about feminism's aim to break free of gender roles. If they see you as an unhappy man, you'll usually get the "patriarchy hurts men too. We're the ones that care about you. MRAs don't" line. And so, if you were to take them at their words, which, by the way, are completely meaningless, then you'd believe that each of them have different sets of things they view as feminism, and they'll usually admit that. They'll say there's many different kinds of feminism. And of course, feminism, to them, is purely the stuff that they not only agree with, you know, the self-serving cherry-picked perks, of course, but also, feminism excludes anything from feminist doctrine that might make them look bad. So if you have, say, a feminist like Lindy West, you'll probably hear a great deal about body acceptance, stuff about how men aren't funny because she made a brief failed attempt at a stand-up comedy career, and maybe some stuff about how women shouldn't be afraid to be loud and angry. Blah, blah, blah. However, you won't probably hear a great deal about the plight of lower-income women, and probably any talk about how women should be able to better access child support money from their babies' daddies. Because, of course, Lindy West makes quite a decent amount of money, and her husband has 2 children from another mother. Therefore, it's not in Lindy's best interest to gripe about these issues, so I challenge you to find her writing about them personally. Even though we know that some feminists definitely do. You see, here's the thing. When it comes to the pop feminists, the undergraduate feminists who are mostly pretty chill, and then the nice middle-aged feminist relatives you have, none of them will likely have an all-encompassing societal vision for feminism or the future that they think is going to be female or whatever. And although the feminist ideology itself definitely does have an overall vision for the future, which is either female supremacist communism or some version of a matriarchy, the pop feminists will mostly claim that these visions are too extreme for them, and basically that they just want bits and pieces of it. To be perfectly truthful, and this is why MRAs and anti-feminists always bring it back to the radicals, no matter how much the moderate feminists wish that we wouldn't and say that that's not fair, the only feminists with a grand, unified, and generally agreed upon vision of what they want society to look like are precisely these pesky radicals. You know, the ones with all the power who are in the trenches of every legal battle for feminist stances and the ones that are in the top positions in the movement. These radicals, of course, are the people like Mona El-Thahawy and her comrades, who fill the gender studies departments and diversity boards all across the institutions in the West. Institutions that they've already conquered years ago, where they occasionally pipe up just to remind everybody of their heinous grip over a defenseless male population and just how little anybody can do about it.
In late September 2019, an Egyptian-American feminist activist named Mona El-Thahawy must have surprised many when, in an interview with Canada's state broadcaster, she declared that the time for female politeness and civility towards men was over. Many of us thought it ended a long time ago. But she went further to claim that girls and women should enact what she called, quote, justifiable violence. And barely able to contain her glee, she outlined a sordid fantasy of vigilante attacks in which, quote, a certain number of men, end quote, would be killed every week until the so-called patriarchy would cease its so-called war on women.
Again, and of course, somebody like Lindy West would eagerly denounce Mona as a radical, and Lindy has every reason to. Lindy doesn't truly believe such things, at least not enough to continue writing insanely misandrist articles like she used to in the current year. However, what has Lindy, or any pop feminist really, ever done to combat these radicals when they rear their hateful heads on full display? Obviously, the answer is literally nothing. Lindy has never published a single article nor a chapter in one of her books that's dedicated to the cultural dangers of the excesses of her movement, and would only ever dream of denouncing these things if she were confronted with them while being put on the spot at a time when she wasn't expecting it. And, I assure you, if she were confronted in such a way, her answer would be something to the effect of, "Oh, killing men is far too radical for me. Next question, please." You see, do you want to know why Lindy West is famous and well-to-do financially? It's because she made a deal with the female devil, compromising her own principles in order to make the more powerful feminists happy, while packaging their message in articles like these without even so much as being willing to entirely own up to it just a few years down the line. Some might call her a useful idiot, while others might call her a soulless opportunist. Personally, I think it's better to just call her clueless. I mean, maybe now she's gotten a clue, but she's still writing feminist books. But all of that's because these games that she's playing are not what you look back upon as you age if you plan on feeling happy about how you lived your life. Ultimately, if you choose to play the game of feminist career woman, feminist career person, one thing is certain. There's only one way to grow as famous and wealthy as Lindy West is, while riding on the backs of such everyday demons of years past as Andrea Dworkin and contemporary mental cases like Bell Hooks. You have to either convince yourself of a lie temporarily, or somehow justify yourself the act of publicly repeating the lie for the whole world to see, because for whatever reason, you've convinced yourself that you deserve to capitalize from telling that lie, and that the people you might harm when you tell that lie deserve it. But of course, things might not end so well if you plan on spending the rest of your life with one of those people. So, have fun in Act 3, Lindy. That's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, money for the holidays would be greatly appreciated. I don't have book deals, and you can help me out on either PayPal or Subscribestar. Links are in the description. Have yourself a good day, holidays, weekend, everything.